Hi guys, Rich Taylor from Gjovik-Lyn Football Club. I've got Michael Morton here from England. Mikey, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about who you are, where you work, what you're up to.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us on, Rich. My name's Michael Morton. I'm currently working at Leeds United Football Club at the moment. I'm 35-year-old and looking to sort of stay in the game for another at least 20 years. And that's sort of my ambition at the moment. Anything else you want on there, mate?
Mikey, I've known you over 20 years, and we're going to try and talk today a little bit about developing younger players. So there's a lot of young players at Gjovik-Lyn who probably want to know what steps they have to take to get into professional football or semi-professional football, or just to get to the top of their game. So could you tell us how you first started in coaching, maybe, so that all the listeners and all the players at Gjovik-Lyn know what your background is? So how did you start in coaching? Where did you start? How long ago did you start?
Yeah, it was a funny one, actually. So when I was around 15, 16, in the summer holidays, I did a bit of coaching with you, if you can remember.
Yep.
Just a little soccer school which was local to us, and we had nothing else to do, so we got asked to do a bit of coaching. That was the first time that I would say that I tried to help young players sort of develop. And if we go back to when we did it at 15-year-old, we enjoyed it, didn't we? We wanted to sort of keep doing that. When I didn't get a football scholarship, I met a guy called Gordon Staniforth. And went and played in his program, and his sort of background's a coach educator. And then on the side of that, the club that I went and played for, the manager, he worked at Leeds United full time. Yeah. So I was in a really, really good place at like 16, 17. I then started working at the Leeds United community scheme. So working a couple of nights a week around my football schedule. I then ended up working within the academy. And that's just sort of built up gradually over the years to where that I've got full time. So it's been really good. I've been fortunate enough to have mentors around me at all times, and it's been a great experience so far. But you're looking at near enough pushing 20 years now of sort of coaching at all different age groups and different clubs.
And your journey, because it's easy for me because I've known you a long time, but is there was it an easy journey? And what moments stood out in your coaching career from the last 20 years? So was there ups and downs? People that maybe stood out and helped you. How did you get through times where it was a bit rough? But how did you get to where you are now? And was there any hiccups along the way?
No, yeah. Listen, it's a difficult industry as football at any level that you go into, and I'm pretty sure there's loads of coaches out there, and there's coaches that you know and work with that have found it really difficult, especially in the early stages. Listen, it's the money's not great. Let's be honest, at certain levels, and it's a tough ride. And most coaches, I would say now, sort of balancing it out with full-time jobs, and it's more of a hobby for them. Unless you're sort of fortunate enough or you keep working hard enough, it's difficult to get into full-time football. It just is. It's a dream of everybody's, or anybody who's been involved with football and played. The next stage is I want to be a coach. Yeah. But yeah, it's been difficult, especially at the younger end. It's I was training at semi-professional and then trying to get to a session before or after, trying to run a car. Really, really, really difficult. But if you stick with it and you keep strong-minded and you keep that ambition of wanting to be full-time, you can do it. And obviously now with how the EPPP and how Europe's going and worldwide, there's more and more full-time coaches, so it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and your journey for me is it's interesting because I've seen you be employed, unemployed. It's similar to a player's journey, I guess, and going through the difficulties of some rejection and some highs and some lows. But one thing I'm really fascinated about with what you've done, Mike, is how you've began and started these big projects as well. So there's a couple that stand out to me. You joined Manchester City when they were not necessarily league champions and not the powerhouse they are now, and you got their academies up, which was fantastic, which I'd like to know more about. But you also did a great job again at starting the I2I Academy and building them into one of the most successful academy again in the UK. So could you give us an insight and some stories about what things were like at the beginning, maybe when they weren't so big, and how did you get them and grow those academies, and what did you see and learn along that way as well?
No, yes, listen, great experience. I think it was 2009 that I left Leeds United in the summer, and then I got a phone call from Manchester City near Christmas time, asking if I would go in and meet them and start employment. And in January, actually just after the Sheikhs had took over, and it was great. I went in and we had a chat with like some of the hierarchy and the coaches and their ambition, and I just couldn't believe it, what they were going after. My job purely at the time was to set up like centres around Yorkshire, or to help set up centres around Yorkshire and bring in the best talent. And they did a presentation on the 1 in 8 pros were from Yorkshire, so that's why we were setting up and trying to sort of get a foothold in and around there. So that was my job as it started, and then I started to work within the academy on certain days. I think yourself came out to games from here as well to watch 23s and things. So it was a really, really good journey, and I think like I was there for about 6.5 years. So watching it grow from Platt Lane into the new training facility, which is one of the best in the world that I've ever seen, and the staff that have come in and their ambition, that they're doing what they said they were going to do, and obviously now they're one of the biggest sort of teams in the world, which is great to see. And it's always good to go back and watch the academy kids and watch what the first team are doing now. Listen, I was just a small part of helping out with sort of the recruitment and development of the younger players based in Yorkshire. But it was a great time to be there, and some of the people that I had the chance to sort of work with and watch. Some people in there who've won Champions Leagues and managed at a top level. It's some of the experience you can draw from them is just unbelievable, really.
And which coaches was there people that stood out that helped you when you were at maybe Manchester City? Was there anyone there who you looked up to as a manager, coaches or mentors? Was there anyone in particular that stood out?
Yeah, listen, going on to like later years, some of the people who are there next year are like working with the first team now. I won't name drop, but they're in with the first team now. Some are working at like top Premiership clubs. We're sort of standing there next to them and listening to how they talk and what it takes to be at a top level. It was an unbelievable sort of experience there, and that's all I saw it was. I just saw it as another step, another area where I can develop. And I just sort of more stepped back later, and especially in the later years at Man City, just sort of stepped back and watched and learned and took things from that I wanted to use, and maybe put some stuff what I didn't like. But if I was to say one, and he won't mind, Dave Harrison's sort of the biggest influence on me. Yeah. He might not be the biggest name from what I did work with, but it's just how he was, how he interacts, how he got me involved with everybody, got me in situations where I'm sat with people, like I say, I've won Premierships and Champions Leagues, and I'm having conversations with him. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had them experiences. So that, massive credit to him. But going back to what you were saying, there was just so many good staff around, so many good things to say. I will use another one. There's Nick Cush now, who's assistant manager at New York now. He managed the ladies' side for a while. He was working with the 12s at the time, I think, when I was there. And you look at like his journey, and then you look at like everybody else's journey. Everybody's going off and doing great things. So it was a good few years there. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be quite jealous of your experience at not just Leeds United but Manchester City. I guess the message is, that experience has helped you grow. But I guess also from my experience working with you, something you did at the I2I Academy that is really hard to do. Is it's not just the coaching side and what happens on the pitch, but it's what happens away from the pitch. And what was it? So what was it like? You essentially built an entire private academy with the help of many other people. But you were like the daddy at the time, one of the main men. Well, a lot of people did look up to. So how did you grow a private academy? How do you get people involved? What does it take? Was there anything in particular? Because I know you're quite good at the structuring a philosophy, a training session. Was it just good coaching and your personality, or was there other things that made the I2I Academy as big as it is now in the UK?
Listen, it was what an opportunity that was, by the way. I think let's go back probably a year before that. There was Simon Collins, yourself and me was working with UST Academy at the time.
Yeah.
So we were obviously, just to explain a little bit on that, we had 2 training sessions a week, I think it was. We invited players in who'd been released from clubs, good inspired players from around the grassroots. And me, yourself and Si, we trained them, 2-3 hours a week and just sort of worked with them and played pro clubs. And that sort of gave me that drive then. When I2I approached us, and give us the opportunity and the foundations to create something, it was just something that we wanted to go at. I wanted to go at. I think the key thing for me, the first thing when we were given the opportunity, instead of looking at the philosophy and looking at the training models and things like that, the first thing that I thought, what came to my mind, was just the environment. Got to get the environment right. And to do that, you've got to have the right staff. You've got to have the right people around you who believe in the same thing. And I think when I look back at the early years of I2I, I think that's what we got right. I think we nailed it. I think we got the right staff. I'm not just saying it because you're interviewing, but yourself. Obviously, Nelly Sanderson, who came on board just after, Si Collins, Andy Milne at the time. Then you had the bosses, your Matt Gore, Jimmy and Kent, and who all we all stuck together and we all believed in something. So when you've got that, it's easy then to create the academy. And I think we sort of created that hashtag one big family, didn't we? So I think that was the most important thing, and that was a thing that I was probably more pleased with. Looking back at probably when we were 5 years in, that was sort of the DNA of the academy. Going to any session, whether I was there or not, you could just see that it was sort of filtering through, and everybody was enjoying it, and everybody sort of felt like that it was a bit more special, and it was just special, wasn't it? It was just special.
Yeah. So that it's, again, having been there with you, I understand that completely, especially relating to creating a good coaching group or management group. That was the key. That's where it seemed to start for me. So, Mikey, we're just going to cover a new topic now. We're going to have a little look at the 12 to 16 age group, which is one that I know you've worked at a lot. And it's we've got some good age groups in Gjovik-Lyn around this age. So, if it's okay with you, pal, could you tell us, in your experiences, at your clubs, experiences in your academies and your life, what players at this age group look like at the top level, their characters, personalities? Is there any that stand out from 12 to 16? And what does a good player sort of have to do? And what does a good player sound like and look like, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Listen, it's a great age group, really important age group, and you make sure that you've got to, for me, like the biggest thing as a coach, bit of advice for a coach, I know it's away from your question a little bit, but you're just making sure that you map out from 12 to 16s, because they go through so many different things in them age groups, like growth spurts, so many different emotions. There's a lot of things going on. They're aware of other things going on in life. So I think it's really, really important at these age groups that, for coaches, that you map out what that young player looks like, and making sure that you monitor what they're doing on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and a yearly basis. It's just so important, because it's like a roller coaster part of their sort of career, really. They're up and down more in these age groups than any other age groups, I would say. Yeah. So I've just wanted to put out there, because I think that's important. Yeah. If you're talking about character, I think it's a good word, that, because I think it is important. I think football is a real tough industry. Let's not move away from that. It's a tough industry, and for any young player, whether you're in an academy or you're out in an academy, you've got to make sure that you're quite a strong character. And that doesn't mean being vocal or anything like that. That just means being driven, being wanting to get better, not being fazed by too many things. And I think if you've got that, I think you're off to a good start. You know, and again, it's something that you've got to monitor, because not everybody can be really strong at a time. But if you've got that, then, like I said, it's a good start. If you're talking like skill-based, for me, if you're looking at the modern game, so if you're looking at like the top end of the game now, the technical ability of players now, playing off both feet, twisting and turning, they've got to be able to do a bit of everything now. You know, give you an example, if you know, going back a few years ago, if you was a right back, no offence, Rich, but if you was a right back, you could get away with just being strong and quick and a little bit bright, and you know, whereas now a modern day fullback, they've got to technically be able to do everything. They've got to come in on the inside, left foot pass, got to go on the outside, got to be strong and quick. So I think that sort of that technical ability is massive as well now. And probably one of the next things sort of added onto that is sort of speed of play. You know, if you look back over the years, I remember being on a presentation with Dick Bate, RIP, probably one of the best guys I've ever seen. He was always talking about the future game. So if we're working with a 12 to 16-year-old now, we're not trying to get them to be where they are now. We need them to be in 4 or 5 years' time. So if you're a 15-year-old, in 4 years' time, what's the game going to look like? It's going to be quicker, probably going to be stronger. So are we helping them players to develop them skills to be where they are or where they should be in 4 to 5 years? So I think like speed of play is a big one as well now.
Okay, that's good. And is there a certain time in the development that you see these traits coming out? For example, you know, you might come across a 13, 14-year-old player who's not physically as big as the other players, and how do you deal with that? Or maybe it might be that their maturity levels are not very high, and how lenient are you with a player that maybe isn't ready to deal with the demands of you know, winning and losing, and struggles with that kind of thing mentally? So how do you develop those skills? Do you see them at the clubs you've been at quite different, or does a professional player have strong skill sets in all those things? Or is it okay for a player to be maybe physically not big enough or mentally not ready yet? And then at what age do they need to be physically big enough and mentally ready, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think that comes back down to what I was saying about planning and understanding what the player's going to look like. I mean, luckily we're fortunate at pro clubs now. We can get all the tests and know where the players are going to be. You know, we know what they're going to be like. A good chance we know where we're going to be physically, and what they're going to look like at 18, 20-year-old. But you know, if you're going off that question that you just asked there, I think for me, I'm not too fussed on the physical side of it. I just want to see, it goes back to the character. So if you're small, are you still brave enough to get on the ball? Have you got the skills to twist and turn, release the ball quickly, so you're not exposed physically? I won't go into names, but I've got a player in 16s at the moment, and he's probably built like a 14-year-old. So physically, against a 16-year-old, he looks like a little boy. But what he does is his character to get on the ball and twist and turn and release off both feet, and understanding of when to play one touch. So when you watch him now, you don't see him getting in physical battles. He's bright and he's clever. And as long as he can do that and he can affect the game in doing that, then he's going to be a player. Now, if he then suddenly has a growth spurt, you've got a player on your hands. You know, he can do a bit of everything. But at the moment, he's affecting games and doing things like that. So I always look at that. And then if you're looking at a big player on the flip side, you know, if he's big and powerful, brilliant, great attributes. But then what do we need to do as a coach? Well, we need to make him technically better. So he technically needs to be good, because there'll be at some point, there'll be players who are big and strong like him, and he's going to have to rely on his technical ability. So again, it comes back down to sort of planning what that player looks like. And if you don't plan and you're just judging the player off that moment, you're going to fail. Because I could have a player at 15-year-old who then comes to you, who might be having a growth spurt, or he might not have had a growth spurt, and you might make a split decision on him. And then unfortunately, that's where at 16-year-old you start to releasing players, and when you actually haven't mapped out what it looks like from 12-year-old and what they've been like, because they might have been consistent from 12, 13s, 14s, and then they might be having a dip. So why are they having a dip? Is it something away from football? Is it in football? And that's why it's so important to sort of look at the bigger picture for me. But making sure that you really do hit them techniques, and you really do like work on the character of being brave, and make sure that you sort of try to get that player where you need him to be at 16, 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah, I think the detail that you sound like you're putting in to developing each individual player now is ridiculously hard and ridiculously high level. Would you agree? You spend a lot of time now, like when you put together a personal development plan for each of your players. Is there a lot of detail in there? And are you speaking to the players about the physical development, mental development, technical? Is that a common theme now at Leeds United when you're speaking to individual players?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's got to be about the individual. Because at the end of the day, as coaches, listen, it's all great playing fantastic football and winning games and things like that. But at the end of the day, our job is to create individual players to go and play at the best or the highest level they can play at. So if we're not focusing on the individual and it's more team-based, we're struggling. Now, they can take so much from team stuff. Don't get me wrong; they can understand tactics, and and I know you've worked with us, and we've gone down that route. But it's got to be about the individual, and I think that each coach should know what's happening on the next stage. So if a 12-year-old's going up to 13, do we know enough about them? Something that's been brought into Leeds United, like and they won't mind me saying, is brilliant. We have team meetings all the time. We have get-togethers every six weeks. We had one the other day on Zoom talking about went from the players from 12 to 16s and what each coach sees what they're like, and I think that's really, really important. And then going back to how I'd work with them is, we have ILP, so we have individual development plans, or whichever way you want to call them, and we just focus on little things, little things that we feel that'll help them. If they're a small technical player, what are we working on? Are we working on them twisting and turning, finding exit routes? Are we working on speed of play? Again, that's up to the coach of what they're going after, but I think it's got to be two ways. You've got to speak to the player and make sure that they understand what you want, and then go down that route, really.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like when a player comes to you, that they're very well looked after. It sounds like their plan, their individual plan, is really helpful. And I like what you just said as well about working with the other coaches at different age groups, finding out your players before you meet them. Maybe a couple of age groups below or a couple of age groups above. It's great to know where your players have been and where they're going. And I can relate to that quite a lot. And it's something we incorporated that at Gjovik-Lyn in trying to keep and monitoring players below and above, because it's important for us to know who we're going to be working with in the future. And really, we've got a great example of a couple of kids who have played up an age group, and there's a debate over which ones maybe drop down an age group for certain games. But I like your detail, Mikey, around that. I've just got a final question on this subject, if you don't mind, about this age group, 12 to 16. What does one of your typical sessions look like now when you're coaching elite 12 to 16-year-olds? And in your past experience as well, what does an elite session look like? And is there a difference between your top level category 1, category 2 academy players and, say, I don't know, a Cat 3 club in the UK or a non-professional? What does a training session look like to you?
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. I think it's a good one. The training session sort of side of it, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think that I don't think there's a difference between an elite session and I don't know, like a lower session. For me, it's just what goes into it. You know, you can put the most basic session on, but it's just the detail that you put in that practice for me. Something that I learned as a young lad, like, you know, whenever I was doing a session, I felt that I had to put on a bit of a show, really. And I don't mind saying it. You know, I was young. I felt like I had to impress the parents. I had to impress the players. I had to impress everybody. But actually, when I look back at it, I never really got anything out of the session. The players didn't get anything out of the session. It just looked great. We got a bit of a sweat on. The tempo was good, and got in the car and off you go. And I think as I've got older, I think like the sessions can be as simple as possible, but just the detail that you put in there. I think that's a massive thing. So I wouldn't get caught up too much on that. If we're talking elite players and maybe grassroots players, the difference is just consistency and speed of play. That's the biggest thing that I see. So whenever we get players that come in from abroad, and we've had a few from Norway, we've actually got some good players from Norway in our system who are full time. But players from anywhere, whether it's grassroots, whether it's semi-professional, whatever age group it is, the biggest sort of feedback that we get back from them is the speed of play and just how consistent they are. So that's sort of the biggest thing that you can sort of define between the players. So then the challenge is for the lower end, you know, let's say grassroots and like that, then is how can they make their sessions so the players are more consistent in what they're doing, and how can they pick up that speed of play? That then comes back down to your individual development plan of a player. So, you know, I might say to you, Rich, because your development plan's to play quickly or 1 and 2 touches, that I'll come to you and say, right, in this drill, can you just play 1 and 2 touch? It's just little challenges and little tweaks. But that's sort of, for me, they're sort of the biggest difference between lower end and sort of elite, if that's how you want to phrase it. Yeah.
It's good though, because it's important just for anyone watching now, especially these players 12 to 16. I think that's a really key message. Is the speed of play, consistency, and probably a complicated subject to try and train, but also a really, really valid point, and something that I can relate to a lot. So Mikey, we're going to move to an older group of players now, and we're going to concentrate on maybe the 16 to 21 age bracket. It's a brutal age bracket in a sense of they can make you or break you now. You know, literally, you can stop playing football at this age group, or you can go on to earn randomly £20,000 a week from zero the week before. In your experience, you've got lots of experience releasing players and signing players. What's it like being in that position? And what's it like seeing players who get offered big opportunities and contracts? And what's it like seeing players that are released? Is it a tough job? And have you had any good and bad experiences?
Yeah, it's for me, like, emotionally, this is the toughest part for any coach. You know, like, 'cause obviously you can see a player come in all the way through from 8-9 year old, and unfortunately they're just not where they should be at 16. Unfortunately, like I say, you know, it's a small percentage that get that opportunity to go on to that next level. It's a real sort of tough age group around there at 16 year old, and like you say, there's a lot of stuff going on in the life as well. You know, with GCSEs and things like that. I've got an idea how I would like to do it, but that's for another conversation. But you can't change the whole structure of football, can you? So, but yeah, on that side of it, like I say, when I say emotionally, it's because you see players who go and get the opportunity and play 18s, and you have the hairs up on your neck. You see players going into the 23, so you get that side of it, such a high, and then you get the low sort of releasing a young player who you might see potential in, but just doesn't hit the grades of whatever club that you're working at. For me, like the biggest thing that I try to make clear to players and parents now is, are we doing the right things to become a scholar? And what I mean by that is are you doing the right things on a daily basis in training away from the club? Am I doing the right things to help you to get a scholarship? So if you're not going to get a scholarship at the club that I'm working at, Have you done all the right things to get a scholarship somewhere else? And that's sort of the mindset that I try to sort of get into the players. So if you've got a weakness on something, or there's a player who might be ahead of you, whether it's in the year below or year above, how can you get as close to them? And how can you be consistent at under 16 level so that you're better than the players that you're playing against? So when it comes to the end, you know, we've got video footage of you. You've got myself and all the other staff that if a club rings us, we're like, yes, you've done the right things. So I think if you do that, you feel a bit better in yourself, and I think the players should feel better in themselves. But again, it's not an easy process to go through. I think it's just because I probably care too much, and I think the other coaches care too much. But like I say, if you can get that mindset, are they doing the right things on a daily basis, in the club, away from the club? Am I doing the right things? And you do generally feel a bit better. And also for the strivers, if they are doing that, then hopefully they get the opportunity to go and step up to 18s level or even higher.
I really like the sound of that. And it sounds like the preparation a player gets with yourself is fantastic. They know their roles, responsibilities, and how they're going to get where they need to get. And I think that's, again, another key thing for Gjovik-Lyn is prepping the players to play for the first team. And it's a huge step up, and we have to prepare them. And it's something that, like you said at the start, it's something you take personally. Sometimes it's emotional. To be the person that's in power of that, in control of that decision. I'd love to keep every player we had, but we can't.
Yeah.
In your experiences then, when a player is not maybe ready, is there something else they can do if they're not ready to be with your clubs? Is there something else they can do, somewhere they can go and get more experience? Do you offer opportunities for players to go abroad from, say, Leeds United or wherever you've worked in the past? Do you encourage them to go study? What's the exit sort of strategy for a player that's not maybe ready, or how do you spot that if they're not ready? And do you know?
Yeah, I think you just said there, the exit strategy is massive. Not just with us as well, but the education. As you know, it's a 50-50 process, and rightly so. You know, the education are in every meeting with us. I'm just using us as an example. That's a big one, but ultimately the players want to play football. So if you're just using me as an example as a coach, my exit strategies have to be are you doing the right things to be consistent on a weekly basis at 16s level? Are you better than what we're playing against? Am I aware of what clubs are after that type of player? Do I know which clubs are after that type of player? So when it comes to that meeting at the end, we've already got them exit strategies. And I like to think over probably the last 2 years that I've been in now, I think we've out of 38 players that I've worked with, I think we've got 32, 33 into clubs. So whatever we've done, the exit strategy has been good. Right. The ones who haven't, and for other circumstances, whether they've been struggling with injury or maybe we can't find them another club, there's so many good college programs out there, whether that's here, whether that's abroad. I think that's a big thing, you know, like there's a lot. I mean, we worked in a successful one, the I2I one, where the lads are training every day and playing at a Cat 1 level at college standard. We produce some good players from there. So it's making it clear to the player and the parent that might be an opportunity for them. It's hard for them to take in because the dream is to be at a pro club, and sometimes the dream is to be at the club that you're working at. It's just trying to make sure that they're looking at it from a bigger picture, and they've got to understand all the different routes, and understand there's so many good routes as well. You know, like we've had plenty of players who have gone to a college program, done well, not being probably at the level to go back to the pro game, and then gone off to America, or like you say, going to somewhere like Norway or Sweden or anywhere like that, and gone made a good career of themselves, but also with a real good education to back up with. So, you know, that's one of the biggest things as well, making sure that they look at it from a bigger picture and look at all the different routes. And I think that's something that I like to do, and that's something that I would say the staff that I work with do as well.
Again, I mean, you're from probably a privileged position. You know, Leeds United are one of the best academies, definitely in the UK. I've witnessed that firsthand. So I guess you can, there's a good care package, for the players, which is nice to know. But I like how you mentioned education quite a lot as well. I think that's something that does get mentioned but quickly put to one side, which leads me on to this really interesting coaching question, but it's something I'd like everyone to listen to now, is more the awkward question around winning and losing and winning and developing at this age group. So we're talking about prepping players to play in first team football now, probably around pro, semi-pro. And what's your views on where do you draw the line in trying to win a game at all costs? Is there scenarios where you just go for it? Or are you more focused, in your opinion, on developing still at this age group? And what's your thoughts on that? Because it's a big debate in football, especially on academies.
Yeah, listen, it's a great one. It's built in us to want to win. It just is. Whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, it's built in us. We're survivors. That's what we want to do. You don't want to get beat by the person you're playing at in anything. It goes back to the earlier one about developing players and character. Like, the player will have that in them anyway, or hopefully will have that in them. They'll want to win. Going back to your question, I think the big thing for me is as a coach is understanding that the players see all scenarios of the game, and it comes back down to planning again. So I don't think there's anything wrong with setting your team up to try win a certain game. Yeah. It may be used so many games a year where you're right, we're going to prep to try and go and win this. It might be that if you don't have a luxury of leagues or anything like that, then you go into a competition, go and play in a cup competition, go and understand winning and losing. But I don't think it should be your focus all year, because remember, it's development of the individual. But for them to become a better player, they've got to experience all different scenarios. So I'm just thinking an example top of my head, if you're working on building from the back and you're wanting to play and you're wanting to do that, then you're probably going to have to sit there and understand that you might make quite a few mistakes and you might get beat in that game, but it's not about winning and losing in that game. It's about how successful you are at getting out. So you create your own little challenges within that. So as a coach, for me, you've got to highlight how many times you were successful of getting out and getting to where you need to be and how many times you failed. So that becomes your little challenge. Forget about the result. That's what you're looking at. So if you can turn around and go, right, we got beat 3-1, but we made 2 mistakes out of the 3, right? We've lost the game. But actually, you're highlighting to the players that we played out 20 times and we got out 15 times and we used maybe 3 of the variations. So well done. Now, the players within inside will be hurting and the coach might be hurting a little bit, but it's understanding that that's what you were going after in that game and that's what you've got to do. But they've also got to be putting that experience of where the pressure is on them in doing that moment. So if you're going after the game and your DNA is still to play out from the back, they've got to realise that making that mistake has cost them, because that's part of development. So don't get caught up in one area. Just make sure that you put them in all different scenarios, which is going to help them progress as a player or into your first team. I hope that made sense.
It does, no, because you've made a couple of good points, which is there has to be an underlying tone of winning in everything, in training, I guess, and in the matches. I like how you used cup competitions in various stages of the season where you can actually just go for that game and do everything you can to get a result. But there has to be that underlying development theme running throughout your game as well. Like the playing out from the back is a very interesting topic because there's many teams failing. And there's many teams having success, and I guess you have to justify the failure, which is, well, actually, it's something we're working on. A lot of young players will be nervous around that subject, and I like to take the responsibility on as the coach, because it's something that we're trying to develop within the player, and breaking the game down into parts. Like, well, actually, we conceded those 2 goals because of this thing that we're working on. And actually, in the majority of the game, we were actually successful in these other parts. And it's justifying why you're doing things and why the results the way it is. Do you have to justify your results, by the way, at Leeds United? It's a random question, but do you have to explain why maybe it was a draw or a loss or the result wasn't how it should have been?
No, I mean, it's not nothing that we're too fussed about, really. We have like team meetings and we talk about what we're working on, what we're doing anyway. We've got a head of coaching who He's got a vast experience on all that, and they just we just sit down and go through what we're doing and justifying what we do. As long as you can explain what you were going after and why you're going after, whether you were successful or not, that's the key thing. So like you say, if you're going after playing out from the back and the opposition are pressing high and you concede goals from it, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to reflect? How are you going to help the players? It's just constant scenarios and constantly challenging the coaches and challenging in the players. But we don't get caught up too much on sort of winning and losing. I think the players that we've got at this level anyway, that I'd say 90% of them in every game are winners anyway, because they're at Leeds United. That's what's in them. So, whatever you give them, they're going to try find a way to win anyway. Whether it's in training or whether it's in a game, that's just embedding them, and that's probably why they are where they are.
That's an unbelievable point. That really is the in terms of scouting, I guess, a big characteristic will be the winning mentality for a top academy, especially a Leeds United academy looking for promotion to the Premier League. So, last question on this subject, Mikey, is another interesting one about modern and old training techniques, but I'm going to try and relate it to the players as well. So, have you seen drastic changes in the way the players are trained and prepared, and if there is any, which ones have you noticed, specifically with the older players? For example, maybe now that there's a high talking topic, I guess, of playing up from the back and pressing. Everyone wants to press like Liverpool, but yeah, it's quite a difficult task for a full team. So have you seen any changes in the way teams are prepped, trained, coached, and how does that affect the bloody player when maybe everyone wants to play at Liverpool, but maybe we can't? Have you seen this scenario, and what's your thoughts on the training methods to get them to the top?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things changing now. One thing that I will make clear is that the older style player, that's sort of drifting away now. You look back at the older player, the mentality, the way they made it as a pro was fantastic, and what they did. But there's not, as the game's progressing, there's not many of them about now. So if you look at like the modern day player now in the academy, they're given a lot of one-to-one. They're given video footage. The coaches have got so many different ways to talk to the player, whether it's a Q&A, whether it's command. That modern player will look totally different in 2-3 years' time in the first team. So I think at the moment you've got like a mixed bag. You've got some command style, the old school mentality, which I think is great, and I think you've got to have that. And then you've got the younger players coming through, but I think that's going to gradually filter out a little bit. And then it sort of comes back to something that I've been sort of working on recently, with my mentors and things, about how I can develop my sort of style of coaching now. And one of the biggest things that I'm looking at is, if you don't mind me saying, I'm just on about myself here, but I'm looking at now to try balance out the week of coach-led and player-led, because the players are given everything now. They're given everything on a plate, that I sort of find that the decision-making in vital times is sort of drifting out a little bit, because they don't play on the park as much anymore. They don't go out and learn a lot of stuff, a lot of life skills and things as much as probably we did when we were kids. And I just look at all the stuff that's going on with the world at the moment, and people are locked in. But I know the first thing we'd have done as kids, we'd have built a massive treehouse in the back garden, wouldn't we? And we'd have probably hurt ourselves a few times. Like, kids don't experience that sort of, I've got to do this myself now as much. Like just little things like going to the shop and getting milk. They don't do things like that now. So, and that sort of fills back into the football side. So going back to where I was going, I'm trying to sort of look at how my training schedule would look on how I can sort of bring that back a little bit. Yeah. So the first part of the week would be coach-led command style. This is what I want, Q&A, position-specific stuff within there. And then back end of the week, throwing players in a scenario where I'm not going to give them the answers, but I'm going to throw them a lot of challenges. So a lot of performance problems. So the things that I was going after, just to try bring back that little bit of players going, oh, I have to do this myself. I have to do this myself. Because when you get to 18s, 23s and first team, it becomes quite vital for so much you're leading up towards winning games in front of 30,000 fans, or whether it's semi-professional and you're playing in front of 500, or whether it's a local level on a Saturday, you're playing for a cup. At that moment, you've got to make them decisions yourself. So it's just something that I do feel that's sort of gone out the modern game a little bit, that the players get everything. So I think coaches need to be aware of not becoming too modern. That's the right thing, and not following too much trends. Because, it's great to see a team play press and do exactly what Liverpool have done, and you've talked them through it day in, day out. Yeah. But then what happens if that player steps into a first-team environment at another club at semi-professional, which we've experienced, and they're doing the press, but it's not on to do the press, and they're being took off, and then you're 1-0 down. Yep. And then the kid's sort of left in that scenario of like, well, hang on, that's what I've been told to do all my life. So I think it's great that coaches are developing and getting better, and they are getting better, and how the games are. They're a lot more tactical, and I love that. But just making sure that we don't lose focus on, hang on, are the players still making decisions at this time?
Yeah. That's, again, it's probably one of the hot subjects at the moment around styles of coaching and styles of different learning styles for the players as well. It's important, I think, they understand the different styles of learning from their point of view. And you can see it on the training ground. A lot of players, you can lose their concentration. You can see it in their eyes because they don't really want to hear your voice that much. And they need to learn, like I probably do sometimes, which is I just got to go make that mistake. But I like how you've related that to young players. The decision-making process stands out to me as a really important topic for young players. Really, for me, Mikey, we've covered the important subjects today. I'm gonna wrap this video up in a sec. I just want to say thank you and appreciate your time, Mike. It'd be great if you did pop over to Norway one day and come and see us. I think everyone at the club would really like to hear more about all these, the way your philosophy, your coaching journey. I think you've got bags and bags and bags of information to offer to this type of club and Norwegian football. Do you think you'd ever possibly venture out if Leeds United potentially didn't renew your contract or something didn't go well in the future, maybe in years to come? Would you ever venture to Norway, pal?
Yeah, of course. I'm always open. Always after new challenges. I think I don't think my boss will mind me saying it. We talk about, he puts a plan together of what I look like when I'm 50. God knows what I look like when I'm 50, but it is, he sits down and plans that with us. And some of my sort of individual development plans are to come out to places like yourselves, to travel around, see what it's like. And listen, at the end of the day, it's like football's just a crazy world, and you never know where you're going to go and what's going to happen from season to season, whether that's like first team right down, things can change. Like I say, the biggest thing for me is I love new challenges. I love like trying different things. I like helping people out, seeing how people work. So I'm always open to go out and watch clubs and train and do things. So no, it's something that I would definitely look to do in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be brilliant to have your experience over here. But before we stop the recording, bro, I know you've been doing a bit of work on position-specific training, and I just wanted to ask how's that going? I've been waiting for about 5 years now for you to bring a book out. Is there anything in the pipeline in terms of you and your coaching and your own personal work that we're gonna hear about in the future? Is there anything I might hear about in the future that you've been working on? Any topics, any books, anything interesting we need to know about?
Yeah, I've been working on a couple of stuff really. Been helping a friend out with a website, putting some stuff out on positionspecific.com. Not sure when it'll launch. It's not up to me on that one, but I'm just helping them out, and I know they're starting to put some really good content on Twitter. But I think like speaking to the people who are involved, it's all around like trying to break it down to the individual and what you're going after. But making sure because we know that we know it's hard for coaches because if you don't have the resource and you don't have the staff, it's really difficult to just go and plan one session with one player. So the idea is to sort of break it right down to show you what it looks like if you have got a small group, what it'd look like if it was a unit based, and then into it as a whole. But you're still purely focusing on that player and sort of getting something out of it. Probably very like the modern youth module that's going about a bit. But listen,
right.
There'll be some great content on there. It's worth having a look. There's loads of free sessions. I think they're updating, and I've been giving them a load of sessions, updating every day. So, yeah, that's a good thing. On the book thing, it's hard getting the time in it to do books, but I'm pretty sure there'll be something in around the website and stuff, which will be good.
I think most people that I've spoken to have been waiting now eagerly for you to bring a book out. So if you do, let me know straight away, because I want to purchase one. But also, I think there's a lot of people at the club that want to have a little look as well. We've discussed your training methods and your coaching at the club, and I just think it'd be a warm reception if something came out. I think a lot of people over in Norway would definitely be interested in the position specific. I think it's interesting. I've looked at some of your sessions. The holding midfielder one that you showed me the other day was absolutely superb. That inspired me. I started to write new ideas down straight away. So thanks for that. But yeah, I'm pretty much. We've done a good podcast / interview, Mikey. I'm pretty happy with how it's gone. Unless there's anything you want to say, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to stop recording, and you can go get yourself a coffee. Massive thank you from me, pal. Massive thank you. And just as they say in Norway, pal, harde bra.
Yep, I can't speak Norwegian, but thanks for having me on, mate. It's been good. Like I say, if it helps coaches and gives people just an idea, or someone takes one thing from it, then brilliant. But again, thanks for taking your time to sort of have me on. Brilliant.
Thanks, bro. I'll leave you to it today, and I'll get in touch with you later on, pal.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, matey.
Bye.